The Club Calypso, Bangkok, Thailand.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls.
A fantasia of feminine beauty on a par with the floor show at the Moulin Rouge or Caesar's Palace. But there's one crucial difference.
And more girls.
Every girl on this stage was born male. At the Club Calypso, the most fundamental distinction in the human mind, man-woman, falls away. These are not men masquerading, men in drag. Every curve of their bodies, every swish and turn is female. For the tourists who pack into the Calypso twice nightly, the management offers a special treat between shows. A chance to get up close, record the moment, experience the excitement, and yes, the danger of it all. An October night on the other side of the world. 4 young men in search of a hiding place in the forests of the High Sierras. In the back of their truck, the body of a teenager. According to later court testimony, 2 of the young men in the forest that night had had sexual relations with their victim. All hell had broken loose at a party when someone blurted out that their girl, the girl everyone knew as Gwen, was transsexual. In their eyes, a boy faking it as a girl. With one of her former lovers screaming out, "I can't be gay, I can't be gay," Gwen was kneed, punched, beaten over the head with an iron skillet, and finally strangled with a rope. They dumped Gwen's body in a shallow grave and crushed it down with rocks.
Her face was caved in. You couldn't even tell that this was my child anymore. The bruises, it's horrible, horrible. I mean, you could tell that she had been beaten. During her transitioning, this was my biggest fear. That she would be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and someone would discover that she wasn't a she and would have male anatomy and kill her. Hate kills, and it killed my daughter.
The violence against our community of transgender women tends to be really just over the top and angry and horrible. Usually a transgender woman is not just punched or beaten up or even just murdered with a gunshot. There are transgender women who are shot with machine guns until they're just pieces of meat, until they're unrecognizable. There are women who are stabbed 30, 40, 50 times and then set on fire. If you can just imagine physically the time it would take to stab someone 40 times.
An everyday scene, 4 friends out for lunch. On the surface, nothing remarkable. Nothing to suggest that 2 of these women are at risk. And never more so should they fall in love.
In 1999, I met a soldier named Barry who was able to see me as the woman I am and who loved me for the person that I am. At a certain point, his fellow soldiers discovered that the girlfriend that he talked about so much was a transsexual. You know, they discovered that I was transsexual. This all culminated in his murder on July 4th in 1999. They beat him to death with a baseball bat in his sleep.
We bring out a certain fear and a certain anger in some people who interact with us because suddenly they find themselves questioning themselves or worrying about how their response to us affects their identity. Suddenly something that they thought was a bedrock part of their identity has been challenged.
Hey Cal, I'm looking at your board and
Andrea and Calpurnia run a website serving the transgender community, offering advice on everything from medical and legal issues to fashion and makeup. Their personal histories defy simple classification, male, female, hetero, homo.
People always assume that this is all about sex. And certainly we are all sexual beings in some way or another, but that's not the entire story. People transition for a lot of reasons. One of the confusing things in my own case for some people is that I'm attracted to women, and so they think, oh, you know, why would you do all this if you were attracted to women? And I think it really points out that this isn't about who you want to be with, it's about who you are. People want to have this nice, simple, black and white binary world where everything's easily compartmentalized. But there's always going to be people who challenge those categories, and that's what we do with gender and sex and sexuality.
So who are these people who blur the lines between man and woman?
What I'd like to do with my voice, get it to the point where it is sounding like a woman's.
What are the forces that shape them or shape any of us
Keep the breath.
sexually?
That was really good.
The answers to these questions begin before we are born. In the early stages of life's journey, we all develop the same basic set of organs, male and female exactly alike. 6 to 7 weeks after conception, we reach the first fork in the road. The route we take from here is largely determined by our chromosomes, male XY, female XX. We take the male direction when a protein on the Y chromosome activates the testes, which produce the male hormone androgen. The female parts wither away.
So what would have been ovaries, fallopian tubes, and uterus get destroyed. What also happens is androgens start to work on the body to take what is an undifferentiated external genitalia and start to differentiate it. So for example, this external genitalia has a mound which eventually is going to become the head of the penis, or the glands of the penis. That mound in a female becomes a clitoris. So it's the same tissue. It just gets utilized differently with the presence of or absence of androgens. The labia, which this tissue has, are going to fuse in the male and become the scrotal sac, which, when the testes descend, are then going to hold the testes so they can dangle about and people be worried that they'll be chopped off. But in women, that tissue is the labia. The vaginal opening closes in males, whereas it remains open in females. And all this takes place in the first trimester, the first 3 months.
But what else can happen in those first 3 months when males XY and females XX take their separate paths? There are other combinations, XXY, XYY, XO, that can send the developing child into territory in between, neither male nor female, intersex.
The challenge of people who used to be called hermaphroditic, what we now call have intersex conditions, is that they really do threaten the idea that there's this clear natural boundary between the male and the female, because there isn't a clear natural boundary. So intersex begins to raise for us the question of what gender really means and to what extent it really matters, and that's very uncomfortable.
1 person in 100 has a body that differs from what doctors consider standard male or female. That's over 4,000 people in a city this size. In our culture, the idea of an intermediate sex seems threatening, and the condition has been shrouded in secrecy. Recently, though, people with these conditions have stepped out of the shadows.
When I was born, doctors couldn't determine if I was a boy or a girl. I had what are described as ambiguous genitalia. My parents were confused, scared. They weren't able to tell anyone who knew they'd had a child if it was a boy or a girl.
The reaction of Max's parents was understandable, given the view of the medical establishment of the day.
The finding of ambiguous genitalia in the newborn is a medical and social emergency. When the cause is established and gender assignment is made, the abnormal genitalia must be corrected.
Max was just a year old when his abnormal genitalia was surgically corrected. He was brought up as a girl, Judy, who underwent a whole series of operations until the age of 15, never once being told what they were for.
For 20-odd years, I was not allowed to talk to anyone about this and didn't tell, just like my mother didn't tell her best friend. I never even told my best friend.
By her late teens, Judy felt confused. She tried a relationship with a boy and a girl.
Whereas my male partner, boyfriend, had not commented on the differences in my genital anatomy, which incidentally I wasn't even aware of at the time. My female partner did. She said something. She said, "Boy, Jude, you sure are weird." I came away from that thinking of myself as a monster or a freak. And so I decided that I would avoid that upset by being with men. So I quite literally settled down with the next guy to come along.
Judy simply married her college roommate, but the relationship was short-lived. Judy had met Tamara.
I was really excited. It was definitely a case of love at first sight. Sparks just flew. It was magic.
I looked at her and fell in love with her. It was love at first sight. She was breathtakingly beautiful.
Then a bombshell hit.
I needed my childhood immunization records. So I contacted my childhood pediatrician and found out he had retired, and the woman who had taken over his practice had someone photocopy my records and mail them. And I opened my mail in a diner in Center City, Philadelphia, and right after my name, which at the time was Judy Elizabeth Beck, were the words male pseudohermaphrodite. And I was devastated and dumbfounded. At the same time, it was almost a relief because I had a label. Not only did I know that I was a monster, but I could tell you, I could point in the textbook exactly what kind of monster I was.
We started corresponding and just had this flurry of letters and gradually just started little bitty disclosures and, boy, when I first met you, you really turned my head, and I would write something back, and, we eventually just called it peeling the onion because it was just little tiny layer after little tiny layer to get to the heart of it.
I think it was a Friday evening. We talked on the phone and talked right through dawn. And at some point during the night, I told her.
I just remember being so sad that she thought that this was going to make such a big difference in the way that I felt about her. And that she hadn't had anybody to help carry the weight of that her whole life. That she'd gone through essentially 20-something years thinking that if anyone knew this, they would just not want to be with her. And I said, that doesn't make any difference to me whatsoever.
The couple lived an open lesbian relationship, but Judy's knowledge of her own medical history was gnawing at her.
I began to question how valid the lesbian identity was. If I'm not female, can I be a lesbian? And thinking in those vicious circles and undermining this precious shred of identity that I had finally obtained threw me into, a very bad depression. I was hospitalized.
What emerged from this turmoil was a man. Judy became Max. The full transition took 4 years, and incredibly, the loving bond with Tamara survived. They live as man and wife with a child conceived by Tamara.
At first I was resistant. I was like, no, I finally got this lesbian relationship thing lined up. I've got a community and I know who I am and I understand the terms of my relationship and you can't go changing it on me in the middle. But on the other hand, I had a partner that I loved desperately who was miserable most of the time and uncomfortable in himself and uncomfortable in the world. He's a much more balanced, doing okay psychologically guy. And I guess I sort of chalk that up as a fair bargain.
I don't have a male identity, and I don't know that I ever had a female identity, but I certainly don't have one now. And if pressed, I suppose I would say I have intersexed identity. I think of myself as intersexed, and I think I have a great deal more compassion than I ever did for men. I was at one point in my life a man-hating, separatist dyke.
Goofy's wife ran into the house. There was Goofy.
We've been together more than 10 years now, and we're still together. This is the same person that I fell in love with. We all change over time. You get married at 19. By the time you're 69, you're not that girl of 19. Your body will change, you'll thicken in some places, maybe you'll lose weight. What we've had is just a more quick, condensed, radical transformation in one of us. And yes, his body has changed. It's going to keep on changing. Over the next 50 years, his hair's going to fall out and he's going to get wrinkles and he's still going to be my Max.
Some 7 weeks after conception, the tiny embryo that would become Max Beck reached the first fork in the road, male XX, female XY, but took a path in between. And there are other paths leading away from the same point. Scientists have already identified 54 genes that affect the response to the chromosomal command. Everyone has their own unique script. Maria Patiño was a champion Spanish hurdler. Her international career was suddenly cut short when she failed a chromosome test used to determine sex in the world of athletics. She registered XY, male. Maria was disqualified from the sport, stripped of her medals, and ridiculed in the press as a man masquerading as a woman.
While the chromosomes kick off a cascade of events, the chromosome itself doesn't tell you what the end result is. There's a whole lot of other things that need to click into place in order to have a properly formed male body or a properly formed female body. In her case, none of the other things clicked into place for being a properly formed male body, but many of the things clicked into place for being a properly formed female body. She was identified as a girl, she was raised as a girl, she looked like a girl. So in terms of her existence in the world, including her heterosexual desires, she was a woman.
Antes, siempre y ahora.
I am, and always have been, a woman, in the eyes of doctors and scientists, in the eyes of God, and in my own eyes. I have never doubted my femininity, my right to be considered equal to all other women.
Maria appealed to Juan Carlos, the King of Spain, Prince Albert of Monaco, and Samaranch, then president of the International Olympic Committee.
I show you the favorite place in my home, okay?
Maria's home is lined with photos that chart her 3-year struggle for the right to be recognized as a woman.
This photo is very special. In this photo, I feel very, very sad.
This was taken the day after her expulsion from the Spanish team.
This expression, these eyes, felt very, very sad.
Pride of place is given to her moment of victory, the first race after she was reinstated and all her medals returned.
She's the first hurdler when compete again, the first.
As a result of Maria's case, the chromosome test has been withdrawn, a tacit admission from the world of athletics that there's no reliable way of distinguishing man from woman.
The International Olympic Committee has stopped carrying out any tests on women. It is a small contribution from Maria Patiño to the women of the sporting world.
The fascinating result of Patiño's case, and then the discussion that followed, including letters to the International Olympic Committee from teams of well-known geneticists, is that they finally have given up and have said it's not always clear who's a man and who's a woman because there are intermediate categories. They're intermediate people.
3 months after conception, and another fork in the road. Hormones have sculpted a body that is now recognizably male or female. Over the next 6 months, hormones will sculpt the brain, male or female. But the genitals can develop in one direction, the brain in another. In the heartland of the American Midwest, 8-year-old Noah is already different.
Midwest America is a real difficult place for a child like Noah. We have a lot of farmers, you know, hardworking people that have always grown up that a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl, and it's also a strong religious belief that Noah shouldn't be like that because God didn't make him that way. It's hard to make people understand.
I like to make stuff out of like ribbons and stuff, like shirts and skirts and stuff like that.
I know it's nothing that we've done. Noah has been that way since he's been old enough to express himself. We've done many things to try to steer Noah away from the way he is now. Nothing's been encouraging. I think with a child like Noah, if you accept him unconditionally, you're teaching him love. You're teaching him that his parents love him and they support him no matter if he's different than the other boys. And I do know one thing, he didn't choose to be like this.
You put it like this, put it in the back, then you twist it in the back, pull on it like that, put it up here and tie it.
Were you worried about this?
Yeah, I was very worried about Noah. I didn't want him growing up, you know, being liking girl stuff or whatever, thinking he was a girl. Nobody wants their son to grow up like that.
Then you gotta keep on wrapping it around until there's nothing left of it, and then you've gotta tuck it in so it stays. Then you have a skirt.
It would be very much relief if Noah, when his hormones kicked in, that he just started acting like the rest of the boys. It would be a relief to me because I know the main thing, his life would be a heck of a lot easier.
Noah's mother, Michelle, and her present husband, Mike.
Did I not give you 2?
Noah's older brother, Luke, a boy like any other boy. For the sake of the children, the adults agreed to put their differences behind them and build a relationship that would make the boys feel equally at home in either household, their fathers or their mothers. Not the only decision that makes this family special.
We don't know a single other family that deals with these issues. We're working it all out ourselves, and then when I have my family that's saying, the family I was raised in, that's saying you're doing it wrong, and I feel so much in my heart that I'm doing it right, sometimes it's overwhelming.
Why do your family think you're doing the wrong thing?
We're a Christian family, and that's what the Bible teaches literally, specifically. I think in Deuteronomy it says that men are not to wear women's clothing. In Genesis it says God made a man and a woman so that they might procreate. This is exactly what it says. No matter what was written in the Bible or any historical document, I can't believe in a God who would not love my Noah for exactly the way he is.
I hope that he will be grounded enough in who he is to be able to withstand that and just be himself and say, I am who I am. You're the one that has the problem.
He gets teased, boys and even girls come up and ask him, are you a girl? And they'll call him, you know, names, slur names that you'd hear, and he gets it at school quite a bit.
Are other children ever unkind to you?
Not usually. Usually they're just asking me questions.
Like what?
Like, are those girl shoes, or are you wearing girl shoes? And they just ask me questions like that, like about my clothing and stuff.
When you start being called a lesbian, homo, fag, when you get called a he, she, the question I think that bothers them the most now is, are you a boy or a girl?
I would just like to tell people that I don't feel like answering all those questions, so don't ask me.
What are your greatest fears?
Just that someone will hurt him. I've read it more than once, that there's about a 50% chance that these children will be killed or kill themselves. That would be my biggest concern.
I'm very worried about Noah's future. This is going to be a hard life for him. It's going to be hard. People just hate things that they're not familiar with, that are not like themselves. And especially in Noah's case, 'cause he'd be better off if he was a girl and would act like a tomboy, because that's more accepted in the male-dominated society that we live in. But Noah's being the boy and liking girl things, that's just, that's not good.
Do you think that your experience of Noah has actually changed you?
I've learned from Noah. I've learned tolerance. I've learned how to look at other people differently. It's changed me.
The Dutch Institute of Brain Research. Here they're looking for biological explanations for the behavior of children like Noah. Work has focused on the effects of hormones on brain development during the crucial 6 months before birth. Deep within the center of the brain, scientists found differences between male and female, heterosexual and homosexual. The Dutch then turned their attention to the transsexual brain.
He found in the brains of male to female transsexuals a female structure, and in the brain of female to male a male structure. So this explains that the brains of these transsexuals have not developed in agreement with their genitalia. They have all the characteristics of one sex, genetics, gonads, genitalia, hormones, but the brain has not followed that track.
These differences were discovered in clusters of nerve cells so tiny that no scanner could detect them, let alone measure them. The only way they could be studied was by microscopic examination of tiny slivers harvested from the brains of the dead. The Dutch researchers made a huge contribution in helping to secure the rights of transsexuals under European law. To our Western thinking, if it's choice, it's the wrong choice and should be corrected. But if it's biology, it's fixed and must be respected. But one question remains unanswered. When did those brain changes occur? Because life's experiences and life's choices also shape the brain, which starts to respond and change long before we're born.
When you're in there, you're experiencing different circumstances, coldness and heat, and the noises that you hear when you're in the embryo. You'll actually hear things, and you'll probably remember some of them.
There we go.
And then when you're born, it isn't all over. Your brain is only half formed at that time. Anyone who's seen a tiny baby knows that this baby has a lot of growing to do.
Humans are born with very incompletely developed brains. Huge numbers of neural connections are made after birth, which means as a response to, in conversation with their environment and their experience. Even at the age of 5, children don't necessarily think their sex is fixed. Children still believe, until surprisingly late, I think, that it could change, that today they're a girl, but they might be something else tomorrow.
And then you grow up. You've got this body, it works, life is wonderful. Then puberty hits. Breasts develop, testes start secreting androgens again and making sperm. Your ovaries start to make eggs. Now you're talking about another critical period in which what you experience becomes crystallized in your brain as part of who you are. So for example, if you have a crush on, say, your gym teacher, and you're 13 and he's maybe 19, and you have a sexual experience with this individual. Well, is that sexual experience going to mean nothing? The experiences, I think, are absolutely key to understanding things like sexual orientation, and not only sexual orientation in terms of gay, straight, bi, but sexual orientation in terms of what you like, what you're attracted to.
With so many turning points on the road to sexual maturity, what are the chances that all humanity can be divided into 2, 3, or even 4 simple categories? The most likely outcome is an almost infinite variety of sexual identities and preferences.
And there are as many sexual orientations as there are faces. Because sexual orientation isn't only whether you're gay or straight or transgendered or other, and the fifth other. It's what you like, it's what you do, how often you do it, and with whom, and and to make it straight or gay is ridiculous. To make it straight bi or gay is less ridiculous. To make it straight bi, gay, transgendered is even less ridiculous. But you can imagine, how far does that go?
The whole world is not white, male, heterosexual, white, female, heterosexual. We live in a glorious world of endowments, and that is true socially, and it's true sexually.
One thing we have to remember, from Darwin to Kinsey to any great thinker about sexuality, is variation is the norm. Biology loves variation. Biology loves differences. Society hates it.
All creatures are united through descent. We share a common ancestry with birds, fishes, trees, and every living thing. So what could nature tell us about ourselves?
There's no precedent in nature for the rigid assertion of a male-female binary of the sort that people are supposed to be obeying. Nature consists of rainbows within rainbows within rainbows, so that even if one does manufacture some category, once you start looking within the category, you find variation within that. And then you could make a subcategory, and you find variation still within that.
In the natural world, diversity is everywhere, from sex-changing fish to male seahorses that actually give birth. In some species, males and females are indistinguishable. In others, there are two or more distinct male or female genders. There are even species where intersex bodies are in the majority. Some animals are promiscuous, others bond for life. And over 300 vertebrate species engage in homosexual behavior. But exclusive homosexuality is a human construct.
Animals don't do this knowing that they're going to reproduce. Animals do this because it feels good. And so, in fact, reproduction is slaved on the back of pleasure. Nature had to put it somewhere. And in Mother Nature's infinite wisdom, she put it with pleasure. Good thing if you're a male black widow who's going to be killed after your first sexual experience, or a grasshopper who's going to have your head eaten off after your first sexual experience. You've got to tie it to something that makes you unable to not do it. Okay? And pleasure is that system.
In nature, the giving and receiving of sexual pleasure has many benefits. It helps to diffuse hostility, encourage cooperation, and build alliances, whether the context is heterosexual or homosexual.
Now, that physical contact isn't limited, of course, to genital contact. There's a lot of grooming that goes on, a lot of very close physical togetherness, and it's by being together physically very close that they can work together. And you don't get team play without very close coordination.
Human sexuality is infinitely more complex. We have culture, religions, civilization. We have to resolve the conflict between our natural urges and the rules. What's fascinating, though, is how much the rules and the ways we deal with them vary across time and place. An Indian wedding. The crowd celebrates the arrival of the groom.
I think in most traditional cultures, weddings are a physical release of all the social pressures that you live under in day-to-day life. People who are from the low middle class, working class environment work 12, 14 hours a day. There is no privacy, there's no space, there's no ability to be yourself. It's a life of conformity, where you have to conform to the social rules and the family rules and obligations. A wedding is a way of release. Marriage is central to the society and to the social rules. Without marriage, you are nothing. Without marriage and without a male son, you have no real social role. To become an adult, you become married and you produce children. Marriages tend to be family marriages. These are not two independent people seeking love and desire and affection between each other. These are two families who negotiate a contract. Inside marriage, there's very little affection between husband and wife. Between husband and male friend, there's a lot more affection. We live in a culture which is homosocial, focused around male bonding. You see a lot of this all across South Asia, where two men holding hands and casually put their arms around there. And the affection is between two males, not between a man and a woman.
The point was made startlingly clear at this wedding. While the bride and groom sat shyly center stage, there was dancing off to the left. But only boys with boys. Not a girl in sight.
A wedding gives an opportunity for that male bonding to go on, the sort of bump and grind of the dance and the eroticization of that space. The weddings are some of the best places to cruise for other men, to cruise for sex with other men. According to them, it's not sex. It's play. It's not real. It's a sort of fantasy, and the discharge is just that tension release. The male's first sexual contact tends to be another male, not a female, because they don't have access to females. Young men don't know anything about women's bodies, and young women don't know anything about male bodies. And if you don't know anything about each other, how the blazes are you going to have a fulfilling sexual relationship or love affair?
The arranged marriage can have painful outcomes. It has for Asha, a very traditional Hindu wife who, like millions of women all over the world, was married to a man she didn't know. Her husband, Vijay. The couple share this home with Vijay's mother, sister, and brother-in-law. There's no privacy here, and Asha performs the role that society expects of her in full view of the neighbors. But her husband, Vijay, lives a double life. After changing into his best gear, he sets off for his second home, where Naseem, another married man, is waiting for him.
There are plenty of people who live double lives and cannot tell anyone. My wife doesn't know. My mother knows but prefers not to. I only got married because of the pressure from the family. I didn't want to. I was already in a relationship with Naseem. We've been together for 11 years now, and we married each other in a Muslim ceremony and a Hindu ceremony. Because he is Muslim, I am Hindu.
Our problem is that we're afraid of society, of pressure from relatives. I'm torn. I want to spend time with my children, and I want to be with Vijay as well.
But your wives, this isn't fair to them.
No, it's not fair to my wife. It's not fair to either of us. We were forced into this. And I feel very troubled because I can't give her the things that a loving husband should.
Harsh divisions, harsh choices. But it was not always that way. In Hindu religious tradition, sexuality began when the god Shiva fell in love with the female aspect of himself. The sexual duality of the god and all his creation is still celebrated in classical dance. But European colonization would change that forever. When the British took India, they rewrote the rules. Diversity was made shameful and driven underground.
The British, being a real uptight, anal retentive colonial project, if I can use that phrase, had to bring their laws in around sexuality. And so they tried to construct non-reproductive sex as a criminal and anti-nature type of behavior. Their belief was that all sexual activity should be based around reproduction, and anything outside of reproductive sex was not considered normal.
According to British law, all sexual acts not open to conception were against the order of nature and could be punished with life imprisonment.
Indian courts have now extended that even further in their need to imitate the British to oral sex, mutual masturbation, and thigh sex are also considered unnatural and punishable as sodomite activities.
In a culture that continues to demand an outward show of Victorian rectitude, the Hindu religion still offers some refuge for those who cannot conform. They can become hijras, regarded as a third sex, neither male nor female, and estimated to number 1 million people. In pre-colonial times, hijras were revered, and a lingering belief in the power of the hijra blessing and the hijra curse offer them some security on the margins of Indian life. Over 2 years, we followed a young man's initiation into the hijra sisterhood, starting in a backstreet clinic in a provincial city. Nada Kumar was then 22 years old and about to take the radical step that would separate him from ordinary society. For thousands of years, this procedure was carried out by untrained hijra midwives. Fatalities were high. The operation is now illegal in India, but there are clinics willing to perform any service at a price. Nada has been saving for this moment since he was 15 years old. The Hijras call the operation a nirvan, meaning a rebirth. According to Hijra tradition, the sacrifice of the male genitalia induces feminine powers, the creative powers. "40 days after the operation, and Nada has recovered remarkably well. The ceremonial washing marks the ritual celebration of Nada's rebirth as a woman called Nandini, a woman with desire. Nandini is led to the altar of Santoshi Mata, a version of the Indian mother goddess who apparently calls the Hijras to sacrifice their genitals as evidence of their devotion to her. Now purified, Nandini is ready for her next step. Today, Nandini is a fully fledged member of a Hijra family, modelled on the Hindu guru system. 35-year-old Uma is mother and teacher to them all. What are Nandini's feelings now as she looks back on that operation?
It feels good. Before, no matter how much makeup I used or what I wore, I always knew I had that male thing underneath. Now there are no more problems, but then when I used to have a bath, it was all female up to here. And when I looked down and saw that male thing, I would just sit there and cry. Now I am fully a woman.
Nandini began describing the journey that eventually led her here. How as a small child she would sneak away to her room and put on her sister's clothes and makeup.
When my parents found out, they would strip me naked. Is this a male thing or a female thing? They'd beat me. My mother, my father, and my brothers. So much. When I was 15, I told them everything. I said I wanted to become a hijra. They ordered me out of the house saying, never come back because it will ruin our reputation. I phoned them lots of times, but they won't take my calls. When we're all together like this, I don't miss my parents. But it's when I'm alone that those feelings come back, of wanting to see them so much in spite of everything. Just to fall at their feet and ask for forgiveness.
We talked until the time came for evening devotions. We learnt that Nandini had graduated with a diploma in IT. But as a hijra, there was no hope of using these qualifications. Devotions over, Nandini and the others take to the streets.
As a hijra, you have only two choices: to beg, or if you're young and beautiful, to do business. I hate doing business, but I'd hate to beg even more.
Bangkok, the capital of a country that was never colonized, never forced to submit to our laws. For all the outward show of Western modernity, this is a city still firmly rooted in the values of its past.
Okay.
Bokporn, stage named Go, is a top model, a star of the Thai cinema, and a Bangkok celebrity. What makes Go's story so remarkable, at least in Western eyes, is that she was born male. She is a Katoi, one of Thailand's huge community of ladyboys. Later this year, Go will be married to Watanasak, a movie executive.
The first time I met Go, I saw her as a beautiful female star. Now she's simply the woman I love. Surely what matters, if you really love someone, is the beauty on the inside, the beauty of mind and character. My family and all my friends never think of Go as anything other than a beautiful woman. A woman that I have to protect and take care of.
In fact, they're overprotective. They really spoil me and treat me as a very fragile girl.
We in the West have a lot to learn from the ways in which Thai society, Thai culture, more or less readily accepts transgendered people. Christianity in the West tells us that transgendered people are in some way sexually deviant, immoral, living contrary to God's law. They're bad. Western psychiatry tells us that transgendered people suffer from something called gender identity disorder. They're mentally disordered. They're mad in some way. In Thailand, People are more able to think of transgendered people as simply different, another part of that rich human diversity which is part of life's tapestry.
This tolerance has its roots in the Buddhist belief in karma, destiny. Whatever we are in this life, rich, poor, man, woman, or ladyboy, is payback for our deeds in a previous life. According to one Buddhist teacher, all of us have been or will be in some future life ladyboys.
I believe I made good karma in my previous life. To be born a man and die a woman is challenging and enriching.
The Buddhist faith provides a space for a transsexual and will honor her relationship. Later this year, Go and Watanasak will be married in a full ceremony in the presence of family and friends.
I'm not marrying for my own sake, but to honor the woman I love, and to honor her parents and my parents.
The lesson seems to be that when the culture allows it and opens the gates, nature flows through, and a rainbow of sexual diversity begins to emerge. The numbers of Thai Katoi are startling. 300,000 according to a recent estimate. That's about 1 in 100 of the male population. The more gifted reach the heights of show business and fashion, and in famous clubs like Bangkok's Calypso, play to packed houses of tourists.
For you tonight, fantasy of Thailand, fantasy of Calypso.
A fantasy of Thailand and a fantasy of womanhood for tourists who come here to marvel at female perfection sculpted out of the bodies of men. But how do these Thai beauties see themselves? Simply as women? Or are there many variations, many shades, many ways of being Katoi?
I don't think I belong to any category. I'm not fully a woman or fully a man. I'm just a normal human being, facing the daily struggle of life.
I never think about which sex I am. Why do people need these labels? Homo, hetero, Katoi? If being attracted to men makes me a woman, then in that sense I am a woman. But that doesn't tell you who I really am. Call us whatever you want. But know that in our emotions and feelings, we're no different from anyone else.
Western plastic surgery and hormone treatments now offer the means of instant self-transformation to a people who already believe in 3 original sexes, in the transience of all things, and in rebirth.
And all that jazz.
I've had everything done, and the full operation. From top to toe. I've had my nose remodeled, my jawline softened, my teeth straightened, chin and Adam's apple both reduced, breast implants, and the complete sex change.
I've kept my penis. It's an important part of who I am, and I'm scared that the surgery may have side effects.
I've had nothing done. No hormones, no surgery. I believe the qualities of a woman or a man can only come from within.
I've had silicone injections in the forehead, the cheeks, the chin, the nose.
But she's kept her male parts. Why?
I was born male, and it's written, "As ye were born, so shall ye die."
Kiss me once, kiss me twice, kiss me once again.
Rainbows of diversity within rainbows within rainbows. 5 Katoi, 5 identities. Whatever the surface appearance, sexuality as individual as the human face. But how did they become Katoi? Their answers are as varied as their sense of self.
I think it's from the hormones in my mother's womb, which shaped my mind and my body.
I believe in Buddhist teaching. I think it's karma, my destiny, because of how I was in my last life.
I think it's the environment. I come from a big family with lots of women, many sisters, mother, grandmother, the nanny, and I spent all my time with them. The men were all off somewhere.
I think it's all of that. We were born this way because of karma in a past life. After we're born, it's the environment. It's how our parents bring us up, and the influences all around us. Then it's genetics, DNA. It's everything combined.
That enough. I'm gonna change the way I drug my stuff. Nobody wants you when you're hungry. There'll be some changes made up today.
I think I felt like a little girl since I was 3 or 4. I remember my first day in kindergarten, when I just curtsied to greet the teacher. Then, when I went back home, I would take a towel, pleat it and wear it as a skirt. I used to use my mother's lipstick. I knew, even at that age, that I wasn't a boy.
The one thing the Calypso girls do have in common is their attraction to men. All of them spoke frankly of their relationships with male partners who regard themselves as thoroughgoing heterosexuals.
My boyfriend and I have been together for 10 years now. We're just like any other couple, any husband and wife.
I've been in love many times, but men always let me down. Maybe I'm better off on my own.
But why do men choose a Katoi rather than a woman?
Because we are male as well as female, we know what men want, as well as what we want.
And the tourists that fill the Calypso Club twice nightly? What draws them here?
When they take photos of us after the show, they keep asking, "Are you really ladyboys?" And when we say yes, they can't believe it.
You are lady boy? Yes. Believe it, don't believe it.
Perhaps they haven't seen anything like this before, because it's forbidden in their own countries. But Thailand is open. We can show ourselves off.
And then she added,
sometimes when I see how fascinated they are, I think it's because we reflect back something unresolved in them.
Perhaps something unresolved in them goes part way to explaining the huge attraction of this country for Western sex tourists. Much to the embarrassment of the authorities, news of Thailand's transgendered males has become the country's most sensational export.
I love Thailand. How are you?
Kui was still a teenager when she posted her picture and her details on the net. Mark, already in his 40s, left wife, family and job behind to follow an obsession.
First time I'd ever been to Asia in my life. First country in Asia I'd ever been to. And she met me at the airport. So she was the very first person I ever met, about 8 o'clock at night, looking, she was 19, I think, just turned 19 years old, just looking as cute as a button. Took me to a hotel, you know, I still remember our very first kiss. Of course, I'd never kissed a boy before, so that was pretty interesting. I still remember how it feels like, the smell of her, and every single thing.
I
never planned to have a foreign lover. I just wanted someone who wouldn't exploit me, someone who would give me opportunities. To be born a Katoi in a poor family can be hard.
Even in Thailand, tolerance has its limits, but on practical rather than moral grounds. Kui lost her father when she was 15. For a struggling peasant family, the transition of a potential male worker into a Katoi was seen as a disaster.
My grandmother once said to me, "It would have been better if I had never been born." That was the turning point in my life. I had to prove I could support the family as well as any son.
Now that same grandmother is entirely dependent on Kui, as is her mother, brain damaged in a road accident when Kui was 8. You're in a powerful position, Mark. Does this ever worry you, the imbalance in this relationship?
No, I don't think that's ever been an issue with us. See, Thailand is just so easy to get along with. We don't have problems with money. We don't have problems with making the mortgage. We don't have problems with her getting pregnant.
Tell me about the attractions of a Katoi. What do you find so attractive in Kui?
She's very feminine. So, I mean, she's sexy like a girl is sexy. But she's also horny like a boy is horny. So it's, you know, you couldn't really ask for much more than that in a person.
I still have the male parts that women don't have. And it was that which interested Mark. Everyone's interested. Not only Mark and not only all males. I'm interested in why I was born a man and feel like a woman. And I still don't have an answer.
Kui's not had full sexual reconstruction surgery. Right. Is it something that you wouldn't like her to do, to go the whole way?
It's not important, but I would prefer that she stays the way she is. It's a pretty big step. It's one thing to have breast implants. It's another thing to have halogen implants or to have your Adam's apple shaved down, but to have your tackle sawn off, it's just a big step.
And is it important to your sexual relationship that she still does have her male parts?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. Yeah, I find it a big turn on. I find very feminine Asian ladyboys who can perform the same as I can, who definitely can't fake an orgasm. I find that a huge turn on. I mean, when I first met Kui, when we were first getting together and doing interesting things in private, I was shooting bullets in the headboard. It was really just the best sex I'd ever had.
Hi.
Hiya.
What are you doing?
Mark and a friend have set up a pornographic site promoting Asian ladyboys, and they're on a roll. Transsexual pornography is the fastest growing phenomenon in the trade, and according to Mark, drawing in the most normal of normal men.
It's unbelievable, the amount of guys that I talk with on the forum who are just regular, rational, normal thinking human beings. And they have this one thing about them that a lot of them try and hide. There are a lot of married people. It's just like a gang of guys who talk football. And we have a football forum on our message board. It's just a gang of regular guys.
And as more and more of these girls become available and want to promote themselves on sites like ours, then more and more guys will, kind of like me, just suddenly be fascinated and taken with Asian ladyboys.
What does that tell you, though, that this is the fastest growing area in pornography? What does that say about men's feelings and men's wants?
Every aspect of human sexuality is just an exploration of a huge and ever deepening grey area. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's fascinating.
If sexual diversity is natural, how can it be threatening? Why does it incite such hatred? In 1996, psychologists from an American university devised an experiment to test something that had long been suspected but never confirmed. From the pool of undergraduates, they selected 64 young men who all identified as heterosexuals who had never experienced a homosexual thought or fantasy, let alone a sexual act. One by one, they were invited to take part in a laboratory experiment. What they didn't know was that they had already been divided into two groups on the basis of answers to a questionnaire: the homophobes and those who were relaxed about other people's sexuality. The lab had been set up for a screening of homoerotic videos, and on arrival, the volunteers were introduced to a little gadget which would measure sexual arousal.
We use penile plethysmography, and I have an example of the strain gauge here. This loop goes around the penis, and as the penis becomes engorged with blood and it becomes erect, it stretches, and we're able to detect those differences in length of the circumference of the gauge. Okay, what I need for you to do is pay attention to the video that we're going to present to you. Then after it's over, I'm going to ask you two questions. On a scale of 0 to 10, how much did that turn you on? And then on a scale of 0 to 10, how much of an erection did you get to that video? Do you have any questions? Okay, we're ready to begin. Significant proportion of the homophobic men demonstrated what we call significant levels of arousal, more than 12 millimeters of mercury increase on the strain gauge to the male homosexual video. The non-homophobic group, the overwhelming majority of these individuals had no sexual arousal to the male homosexual video.
Here was confirmation. Those who are outraged by sexual deviation are often fighting something within themselves. In this particular experiment, the extent of the denial was further underlined by answers given to the question, how much did that video turn you on? Although all participants were sitting there with their pants down and the evidence before their eyes, almost to a man, the homophobes reported no reaction whatsoever to the video. Denial and self-deception were themes at the trial of Gwen's killers. Two of her assailants had had sexual relations with her in the weeks before the murder. She'd had no transitional surgery and was anatomically male. Only when that became known to the wider group did the young men resort to violence. I can't be gay, I can't be gay.
What is it that induces extreme violence to the point of killing someone, against people who are transgender or who are gay? The source of that violence, not always, but very often, comes from adolescent males, and often ones who are the least secure about their own sexuality.
People who are comfortable with their own sexuality are not threatened by people of a distinct orientation or distinct practices. Why should you be threatened?
Are there no moral lines at all?
I think there are. Don't hurt other people. Don't do things that other people don't want you to do. Don't judge people, lest you be judged.
Forbidding these different points of view or these different existences in the world doesn't control them either. It just drives them underground. And they erupt in things like the scandal in the Catholic Church.
Can't we respect diversity? Because it exists all over the place. We have to respect it because it's nature.
If you're feeling confused about issues surrounding your sexuality or gender, you can find more advice and information at channel4.com/health. Next Thursday at 9, in the first of a new series, Make Me Normal, meet students at one of Britain's largest schools for autistic children. Details coming up.